From above, this town looks whole, like nothing ever goes missing here. But when you walk its streets long enough, you learn how easily a life can slip past you unnoticed. And sometimes the only way to survive is to walk away from everything you were meant to be.
Before we talk about the diary, I want the day straight. No guesses, just facts.
It was clear, cold but not bitter. The kind of morning that tricks you into thinking nothing bad can happen.
What time did you see her last?
Just after sunrise. She was wearing that brown jacket, the one with the torn cuff. She hated that jacket.
Yet she wore it.
She said it was warm.
Doors locked?
Yes. Animals fed, stove cold.
No missing clothes?
No, nothing is missing. Everything was there. Even her good boots.
That bothered me then. Still does.
By noon, people were knocking. By sunset, the whole town knew.
That's how it goes in small places. It felt like she vanished between breaths. We brought dogs. They lost her scent near the granary row, right where the wind cuts hardest. Convenient spot. You think she planned that even then? I didn't want to think that.
After the fourth day, that's when people stopped believing she could be found.
I didn't. I didn't stop believing.
But the town moved on. Too fast, people started guessing.
They always do.
Some said she ran off. Others said she didn't make it past the river.
No body, no evidence. Cases like that don't close, they just go quiet. She wouldn't leave without a reason. That's what we couldn't find.
3 winters passed after she vanished. Out here, time doesn't rush. It stacks. One season on top of another until you can't tell which year taught you what. People stopped asking me how I was doing. They stopped lowering their voices when they said her name. Eventually, they stopped saying it at all. Her house stayed locked. I kept the key. I told myself it was practical, that I didn't want anyone else going through her things. But the truth was simpler. As long as that door stayed shut, part of her still belonged to this place. The sheriff came by in the 3rd winter. He said it was routine. Old cases get reviewed. Properties get inspected. That sort of thing. He didn't expect to find anything. Neither did I. That's when we found the loose board. It was under the stairs. A place you wouldn't notice unless you already knew it was there. She used to complain that those stairs creaked for no reason. Said the house was trying to talk. Under that board was oilcloth folded tight. Inside it was a small book, a diary. I remember the weight of it in my hands, light but heavy at the same time, like it had been waiting. The sheriff asked if I wanted to read it. I didn't answer right away. The first entry was dated years before she disappeared. The handwriting was neat, careful, like she didn't want to be misunderstood even by herself. The first line said, "I need a place where I'm not known." I read that line over and over. I thought I knew her. We all did, or we thought we did. She smiled at the right times, showed up when expected. She didn't complain, not out loud. The diary said otherwise. As I read on, I realized she'd been leaving long before she left. She wrote about feeling watched, not followed, not hunted, just seen all the time. By neighbors, by family, by me. That one hurt. She wrote that even kindness felt heavy when it came with expectations. That people wanted pieces of her without meaning to. Advice, plans, opinions. A future already decided. She never used the word trapped, but she didn't need to. The middle entries changed tone. Less feeling, more detail. Dates, costs, distances. She listed bus schedules. Not the main routes everyone used, but the smaller ones. The kind that passed through places no one stays long enough to remember. She tracked money, small amounts, cash saved quietly. She sold things, jewelry, a watch her mother gave her. She wrote that she told people they were lost. I remembered believing that. She stopped writing letters around that time, stopped talking about the future. I thought she was tired, thought she was settling. She was preparing. There was a page where she wrote, "Leave nothing missing. She didn't want her leaving to look like a leaving. She wanted it to look like nothing at all. She packed nothing important. She left her good boots, left clothes she loved, left things that would make people think she'd come back. That part was hard to read. Near the end she mentioned someone. Only initials. No names. It wasn't clear if that person helped her or just listened. The sheriff thought it could have been made up. A way to feel less alone on the page. I don't know. W. The last entry was written the night before she vanished. She wrote about fear, but also relief. She said both can exist at the same time, and that scared her more than either one alone. The final line said, "If I stay, I disappear slow." Why? The next page was blank. We followed the diary like a map. The sheriff checked records, bus logs, seasonal work lists, farm labor, places where people come and go without questions. She used a different name, but the handwriting matched. She worked when she needed to, left when she didn't, never stayed long enough to be known. She built a life where she could breathe. There was proof she was alive. Not recent, but enough. The sheriff asked if I wanted to keep going, to find her now. I didn't answer right away. There was one note, tucked loose between pages, written years after the diary entry stopped. It said, "Did anyone look tired when I left?" I knew she meant me. That question stayed with me longer than anything else she wrote. She never came back because coming back would mean explaining. And explaining would mean defending a choice she didn't read. The sheriff closed the book and asked if I wanted the case reopened. I told him no. She didn't vanish. She escaped. That should have been but it wasn't. The sheriff called me a week later. Said something didn't sit right. The diary had been hidden for years. But the last page, the paper itself, was newer. Not the writing. The page. Someone had handled it recent. Till what? Meaning she knew it had been found. Meaning she might be closer than any of us belie. Vet. The prairie teaches you one thing: if you stay long enough, nothing truly disappears. It just learns how to stay on. I don't know if she's watching this town, but I know now, she never stopped watching herself. And if she chose to disappear once, she might choose to return on her own terms. I didn't tell anyone about the sheriff's second call. Not my neighbors, not her friend, not even the sheriff himself. After that first conversation, once he said the words, "Someone touched the diary recently," I felt something close in around me. Not fear. Awareness. If she had reached back toward the past, even slightly, then she was closer than she wanted us to believe. And closer than I was ready for. For days nothing happened. The prairie stayed quiet the way it always does. Wind moving through dry grass. A truck passing once in a while. Same routines. Same empty space where her house sat, still locked, still waiting. I told myself I was imagining things. Then I found the envelope. It was in my mailbox, mixed in with seed catalogs and a power bill. Plain. No return address. My name written in careful block letters, the way someone writes when they don't want to be recognized by their handwriting. I stood there longer than I should have. I knew before I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. No greeting, just one sentence. "I heard you found the diary." My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I felt calm in a way that only happens when something you feared has already arrived. I sat at the kitchen table and read it again. No name, no signature, but I knew. The sheriff said later that mail like that usually came from someone trying to insert themselves into a story. A liar, a troublemaker, someone wanting attention. I didn't believe that for a second. She wouldn't reach out for attention. She would reach out for control. I didn't respond right away. I waited. 2 days later, another envelope came. This one slipped under my door sometime during the night. Same paper, same writing. "You were right not to reopen the case." That one stayed with me longer. She knew what decision I'd made, which meant she was watching more closely than I thought. I finally wrote back. Not much, just enough. I didn't reopen it. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't sign my name. 3 days passed. Then a third letter came. This one was longer. She said she hadn't planned to contact anyone. that the diary was supposed to stay hidden forever. She said finding out it had been discovered felt like someone calling her old name across a crowded room. She wrote that she wasn't afraid of being found. She was afraid of being pulled back. She asked me something simple. Do they still think I ran because I was weak? That question sat heavy. I wrote back the truth. No. They think you vanished because they didn't know you. Her reply came faster that time. She said that was close enough. She didn't tell me where she was. She didn't need to. The details she gave were small but clear enough. Seasonal work. A place where winters were shorter. A town where no one asked about yesterday. She said she had learned how to disappear in plain sight. She worked with her hands now. Not because she loved it, because it left her mind quiet at the end of the day. She said something else too. You were the only one who never told me who I should be. That part surprised me. I didn't see myself that way. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes the safest people are the ones who don't try to save you. Then she asked me not to tell the sheriff. I didn't. The letters became regular. Not frequent, but steady. Every few weeks. Always handwritten. Always mailed from a different place. She never said she was happy, but she said she was real. She talked about small things. A woman she rented a room from. A dog that followed her home one winter and never left. A job she quit without guilt when it started to feel familiar. She wrote about freedom like it was quiet, not loud. No big moments. No dramatic relief. Just waking up without the weight of being known. One letter ended with, I don't miss people. I miss being understood without explaining. That hurt more than it should have. Eventually she asked me a question I knew was coming. If I came back, would you tell anyone? I didn't answer that one right away. Because it wasn't just about telling. It was about whether coming back would undo everything she'd built. I wrote back honestly. If you come back, this place won't be the same. And neither will you. I don't know if that's worth the risk. Her next letter came months later. Winter again. She said she wasn't coming back to stay. She said she just wanted to stand on the land once more. To see it without the pressure of belonging to it. She said she'd come at night. Leave before morning. She asked if I would meet her. I didn't tell the sheriff. I didn't tell her friend. The night she came back, there was no sound but the wind. She stood at the edge of the field like she wasn't sure it would let her in. She looked older, not worn, just shaped by time. We didn't hug. We didn't apologize. We stood there and talked about nothing important. Weather, roads, the way the town still smelled like dust after rain. She thanked me for not turning her into a story. She said disappearing taught her one thing, that leaving isn't always about running away. Sometimes it's about refusing to disappear while staying. Before she left, she handed me a small notebook. Not the diary, a new one. She said, if I ever vanish again, this one isn't for you to find. Then she walked back into the dark. By morning, there was no sign she'd been there. The sheriff never reopened the case. The town moved on. And I learned something I hadn't understood before. Some people don't want to be found. They want to be remembered correctly. I still have that second notebook. I've never opened it. Because once you read the rest of someone's truth, you're responsible for what comes after. I didn't open the notebook right away. I told myself it was respect. That some truths weren't mine to take. That she had trusted me by leaving it sealed. But the real reason was simpler. I was afraid that once I read it, the mystery would end. And mysteries, even painful ones, give people something to hold on to. For weeks, the notebook sat where she left it. Bottom drawer of my desk. Wrapped in a cloth. Untouched. The sheriff stopped by once just to check in. He said the county was closing old files, clearing space. He asked if anything new had come up. I said no. That wasn't a lie. Nothing new had come up. Not yet. The notebook waited until the night the power went out. Out here, that happens more often than people think. When? Old lines. No drama. Just darkness. I lit a lamp and sat at the desk without thinking. The drawer was already open. The notebook felt heavier than it should have. Same size as the diary. Same worn cover. But this one felt deliberate. Like it had been made to be found eventually. The first page was dated. Not from before she vanished. From after. 3 years after. That's when I understood this wasn't a confession. It was a record. She wrote in short lines. Clear sentences. No metaphors. No apologies. She wrote like someone who had decided not to explain herself anymore. The first entry said this. If you're reading this, it means I stayed gone long enough to become real. That line stopped me. Not because it was poetic. Because it was practical. She believed disappearing wasn't the act. Staying gone was. She wrote about the first weeks after she left. How she didn't feel free. Just alert. Listening for her name everywhere. Watching people's faces in stores, waiting to be recognized. She said fear doesn't vanish when you run. It just changes shape. She slept badly. Moved often. Took work she didn't care about. Avoided mirrors. Then she wrote something that mattered. She said the town hadn't been cruel. That surprised me. She wrote that the town loved a version of her that didn't exist anymore. One that was useful. Predictable. Easy to place. Leaving wasn't punishment. It was correction. People always assume there's a single reason someone vanishes. A bad man. A crime. A secret. The notebook didn't give them that. It gave something harder. Pressure. She wrote about how small expectations stack up. How being the good one becomes a role you can't exit without consequences. She was reliable. She showed up. She didn't cause trouble. That became her identity. She wrote that every choice she made was treated like proof she would never change. And the one time she tried to, people acted like she'd betrayed them. She wasn't abused. She wasn't trapped. She was boxed in by familiarity. That's harder to explain. And harder to escape. The notebook didn't dramatize it. No storm. No final argument. No goodbye. She woke up early. Packed light. Left things behind on purpose. She wrote, if I take everything, I'll leave a trail. If I leave nothing, they'll invent one. She walked to the road. Caught a ride with a man who didn't ask questions. Paid cash. Got off early. She said the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was not turning back when nothing stopped her. This part surprised me. She followed the search. From a distance. She read local papers. Heard rumors. Watched how quickly people filled in blanks. She wrote that investigators weren't careless. They just didn't imagine she wanted out without drama. Every theory involved danger. None involved choice. That hurt her. She wrote, they keep asking what happened to me. No one asks what I did. Halfway through the notebook, she explained the diary. She wrote it knowing it might be discovered one day. Not as a map. As insurance. She knew if she vanished without leaving something behind, people would decide she was broken. The diary wasn't meant to guide anyone to her. It was meant to complicate the story. To make people pause before turning her into a warning. This was the part one didn't expect. She didn't reach out because she missed me. She reached out because I didn't look for her. She wrote that the people who searched hardest scared her the most. Because they wanted her back the way she was. I never wanted that. I wanted her safe. That was it. She said that difference mattered. She didn't romanticize it. She worked low-paying jobs. Moved often. Started over more than once. She made mistakes. Trusted the wrong people. Left again. But each time she chose. That was the difference. She wrote, I am not happier. I am truer. That line stayed with me. There was one entry that felt heavier than the rest. She wrote about standing outside the town limits one night years later. Watching lights. Remembering routines. She said she almost came back. Not because she wanted the life. Because she wanted to stop being a question. She didn't. Because answers come with expectations. The last pages explained why the notebook existed at all. She was sick. Not dying. Not dramatic. Just enough to remind her that time isn't endless. She wrote that she didn't want to vanish twice. Not without clarity. The notebook wasn't for the town. Was for the truth. She trusted me to decide what to do with it. I didn't take it to the sheriff. I didn't publish it. I didn't show it to her friend. Because true crime likes clean endings. Real life doesn't. I did one thing. I wrote back. I told her I'd read it. I told her she wasn't a mystery anymore. She replied once. Just once. Good. Let it stay that way. A year later, the county officially closed the file. Voluntary disappearance, they wrote. No charges. No suspects. No remains. The town accepted it quietly. People always do, eventually. They don't need the truth. They need a place to put the story. I still have it, sealed again. Not because I'm afraid, but because some truths don't need witnesses. She didn't vanish because she was lost. She vanished because she knew exactly where she was headed, and she didn't want to be followed. True crime asked who did it. This story asked something harder. Who gets to decide who you are? She answered that by leaving, and by staying gone. There's one thing I haven't said. The notebook ends with a date, a future one, and it hasn't happened yet. People think a mystery ends when you get answers. That's not how it works. A mystery ends when there are no more questions you're willing to ask. I learned that the night I finished reading the notebook. I sat alone at the desk until morning. The lamp burned low. The house made its usual sounds. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden realization. No sense of relief. Just understanding. By the time the sun came up, I knew the truth in a way that didn't need proof. She had not been taken. She had not been broken. She had not been lost. She had left. And she had stayed gone. That difference mattered more than anything else. When someone disappears, people rush to fill the silence. They talk about danger first. They talk about fear. They talk about what might have happened to her. No one wants to believe that a person can leave without asking permission. It feels personal, like an accusation. The sheriff admitted it years later when the file was finally closed. He said they kept looking for a threat and never looked for resolve. That line stayed with me. Resolve doesn't announce itself. It doesn't leave wreckage behind. It doesn't ask to be admired. It just moves forward. She had that kind of resolve. The notebook didn't beg to be understood. It didn't justify her choice. It didn't apologize. That was the hardest part for people who eventually read parts of it. They expected remorse or regret. They expected pain written clearly so they could judge it safely. What they found instead was clarity. She didn't hate the town. She didn't hate the people. She didn't even hate the life she left behind. She simply outgrew it. Growing alone doesn't look brave from the outside. It just looks confusing. People asked why she trusted me. The answer was simple. I didn't need her to be anything. Not brave. Not grateful. Not present. I didn't imagine a future that required her participation. I didn't call her selfish for wanting space. I didn't turn her absence into a story about myself. I accepted the silence. That mattered to her more than I understood at the time. The notebook wasn't written to explain. It was written to draw a line. She wrote that anonymity wasn't loneliness. It was rest. She wrote that being remembered wasn't the same as being known. She wrote that love without freedom becomes surveillance. Then she wrote one final line that closed the story for me. She said she didn't disappear to be found. She disappeared to stay. There was no hidden meaning, no metaphor, just a decision stated plainly. People assume closure requires return. It doesn't. Closure requires alignment. Coming back would have meant reopening a version of herself she had already buried. People would have wanted explanations, forgiveness, reassurance. She didn't know any of that. The notebook was what she could give without giving herself up again. I didn't make the truth public. I didn't sell it. I didn't turn it into something people could argue over. Stories like this don't fit neatly into true crime. There was no villain to punish. No rescue to celebrate. There was only a woman who chose herself. That doesn't satisfy people looking for justice. I gave the sheriff what he needed to close the case. Nothing more. Voluntary disappearance. The rest stayed with me. The town moved on the way towns always do. The house was sold. The stairs were fixed. The loose board was replaced. New people moved in. New routines took hold. Her name was said less carefully over time. But not at all. That wasn't cruelty. That was life. Mysteries fade when they stop being useful. I still think about her sometimes. Not with longing or grief. With recognition. She taught me something without meaning to. Staying can be harder than leaving. Endurance isn't always virtue. Being seen isn't the same as being understood. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is remove themselves from the story entirely. People always ask one last thing. They ask if I ever heard from her again. No. And that's how I know she succeeded. If she had written again, it would have meant she still needed permission. She didn't. The notebook is sealed now. Not because the truth is dangerous, but because it is complete. There is nothing left to solve. She didn't vanish. She stepped away, and the world kept turning. Some stories don't end with justice. Some don't end with reunion. Some don't end with answers that feel good. This one ends with a woman who chose her own life, and a town that had to accept it. That isn't tragedy. That is agency. And that is where the story ends.